to another episode of Detonation. We have Mr. Schattke. He's a former candidate, and he's here to talk about the USTP reflections. We've blasted through the campaign season. We've come out the other side, and you know, even this is what democracy is all about, ladies and gentlemen. It's about being able to challenge the system, reform the system, consider efficiencies within the system, and ensure that voting is transparent, fair, and above board. Because if it's not, that's not true proper democracy, and that's what everybody wants from the USTP, especially. I mean, on national levels, gerrymandering, it goes on. There's all sorts of shenanigans, especially in the United States with electronic voting machines and other things that goes on. But at the USTP, they're trying to set a new standard, and Mr. Schattke serviced Detonation very well. He serviced the transhumanist-party very well. He brought a lot of very good things to the table, especially around considerations of nuclear engineering, which is your field. Mr. Schattke, I'm handing over to you. You have some concerns, some talk, some commentary now based on the USTP election. Would you like to launch off into what you want to say?
Yeah, let's start. There are a number of things that were fishy about the election. Okay, I am getting an echo here. The first thing was the extension at all. I mean, when Gennady, after the second debate, decided to extend the election and allow more candidates, at that point, the election became farcical. When you have a situation in which there's no real nominating process, and then you let people just sign up to be candidates, that's completely weird. The standard situation, even in small clubs, is that somebody nominates someone as a candidate for a position before you vote on it, right? You have to you don't get just I think I'll run. No, somebody says I think they would be good at this. So just having people randomly show up and say I want to be the U.S. transhumanist-party candidate is goofy, okay? But why did he do that? Well, he wanted to spread the range and take away votes from at least one of the candidates.
I think that's a little bit conspiratorial. I mean.
Well,
you don't think that's conspiratorial?
I saw.
Wouldn't have been able to get in there, right?
Yeah, and I wouldn't have been harmed in any way by not running. And as for whether I'm a candidate now, I'm as much a candidate as I was before because I'm an independent candidate for president. My only difference is now I am still an independent candidate for president. My only difference now is that I say, well, you know what? Sorry about the people I was working with wanted a UBI and universal health care, and those are off the table. I will not support those in any way, shape, or form as president. So we've got these shenanigans. And why do we have the shenanigans? Well, because Gennady got strong-armed by a person named Natasha Vitamour. She's the wife of a guy who runs a cryo preservation lab, and she's a major player in the Humanity Plus people. So Gennady thought that if he did that, if he kowtowed to her, these Humanity Plus people would support the Transhumanist Party. And he says it in a private message to Rachel Haywire, because she had made sure that Humanity Plus and especially Natasha wouldn't be involved before she joined. And that is because of history between her and Natasha that I can't speak to, because I have no idea whether it's true or not. But I have seen the PM between Gennady and Rachel saying Natasha was trying to strong arm with, and then a couple, a little bit in, Michael Laurie, who's the head of the New Hampshire, I guess, Transhumanist Party, brings up some salient points. He says, according to election law, you can't have non-citizens vote even in a party election, and it's not allowed. And Gennady just brushed him off, and when he asked for clarification, banned him from the group on Facebook and expelled him from the National Party. It's crazy. It's just crazy. And then we get, this shenanigans where these debates aren't real debates. They're kind of a weird format where there's no, response to anybody else's points or anything like that, and where there's, these questions that have nothing to do with it, and then, what does Ben Zion do? He doesn't even answer the first three questions. He just pounds his oh, gonna give you $52K a year, nonsense. And I guess it was good enough to convince enough people. There's enough people who, if you promise them that you're going to give them money, will vote for you. And he's like, well, I did 100 interviews, and is it surprising I got 100 votes? I don't know. I know a number of people who he interviewed didn't vote for him.
Well, I think Gennady had they're certainly on the election, the internal voting mechanism. I'm pretty sure that doesn't violate U.S. federal law, and I think Gennady has refuted that a bunch of times in written form and verbal form. Well,
Gennady's hanging it on the fact that the U.S. Transhumanist Party is not a real registered political party. I don't know anything about that, but
I'm sure Gennady can clarify. I'm sure Gennady can clarify that. I don't think that's an issue. I really don't think that that's a big issue. On the other ones, Humanity Plus is just simply a player. I mean, Natasha Petermore only got one vote. I only got one vote, and you only got one vote. I mean,
I don't even know how many people are involved with Humanity Plus, how many people they have on their mailing list, how many people of the Transhumanist Party are part of it.
It's simply a player in an ecosystem of players. I don't know how that has any real stick there. I don't think that has an argument, right? I don't think that stands up.
Well, if Gennady's point that he's not a real party and that he doesn't have to hold to election law was true, then Natasha Vita-More threatening him with election law violations wouldn't have held any weight, and he wouldn't have extended the the election.
You don't think extending the primary and getting all these other people involved was a good idea? You want to just wholesale Ben Zion and haywire? Like, you don't think yourself or Kristen T. Harris or Kimberly Forsyth or any of these other John Kurtz, you don't think these people made a valuable contribution to what actually the core of it is the raising of the voice of transhumanism, right? I mean, this is built off Zoltan Itzvan's idea of
the only one of the additional candidates who got more than one of the original candidates in votes was as a first place vote was Kristen Harris.
Yeah, the dark horse.
Yeah,
and the argument is that if Kristen Harris had more time, he would have definitely been right up there with the top three. I mean, that was the deal. He just didn't get enough.
No, I don't think so.
He just didn't get enough stage presence.
No, he has his own media presence, and he's another media personality.
Yeah, sure.
And that's where he got his strength. But the U.S. Transhumanist-Party, in their voting, showed that they prefer to be told nice lies than to be told reality. Right? They showed that they don't want to be limited, that they think limiting to what we can do today limits what we are striving for in the future, right? And that's where I guess I didn't present my message correctly, but that's not neither here nor there, and it's over. It's over, and I don't care. But the final straw for me, where I said, these people are jokers, was when Gennady just completely ignored the whole none of the above vote. When you have a none of the above vote, you don't ever get rid of it. You can't say none of the above is ranked, hasn't gotten enough votes at this point. We can ignore the none of the above from now on. No. Ranked vote, preference voting, and none of the above. Once somebody has voted none of the above, that means that none of the further candidates down the list are in that person's ranking preference. They don't care anymore. They would not want any of those people that they ranked none of the above. So at that point, you shouldn't have counted those. So there's 13 of none of the above. Only had 157 in last place. And Gennady said he got down to the 7th choice. That would have been 299. No, 199 votes left. There shouldn't have been 312 votes at the 7th round. There should have been 199. The remaining people who hadn't chosen none of the above by that point. And that would have significantly changed the situation. Or it might not have. We don't know, because Gennady is not going to recount with none of the above treated properly. And he got the result that he wanted. The insider, the guy who drove around the West Coast and made the events, got the election.
Yeah, but Mr. Holsopple also drove around the West Coast and went to the events. You know, it's just about the creativity of the candidates. That's all that was about. Again, Humanity Plus is just our player,
and I think Rachel made a
it's
big
not exactly
mistake.
the best. It's not exactly the strongest element for the USTP. I mean, there was controversy that they would have liked to stay away from. Throwing out H plus might have been a strategic move, but it's just in the end of the day, it's just democracy, right? That reigns. I mean, I'm sure Gennady can come on and refute.
My point is, democracy wasn't respected here. Democracy wasn't respected, and that's
on
the
debate. On your debate point, though, I do agree with you that there has to be modifications to the debate, the way the debates are run. I absolutely think that. I think this, it came up. Kristen T. Harris also was having, also had objections. He said it felt like a candidate profile, which is kind of invented here on this platform. But it felt like a candidate profile as opposed to a debate, which was supposed to be robust rebutting of other candidates' ideas, and stuff like that, whereas you just go around on a timed system. So I agree with that. There does need to be changes to that. And I agree that there can be changes to the rank preference voting system in the fact that I don't think none of the above should have existed. I thought put it in where it was at that time with very little information about what it was. A lot of people were found scrambling to find out what it was and what it meant. And we don't have none of the above. Australia is pretty much a rank pref voting system on a national level. We don't really have none of the above. We just have, you tick a box, you put in your number, you don't put numbers in if you don't like it, and that's it. I'd never really seen that.
Well, that would have been the same effect.
I'm 26. I've been voting. I'm 26. I've been voting at a national election since I was 18. I've never seen this before, so I was kind of confused.
Well, none of the above. There's like 10 states that allow none of the above in a vote, and if none of and when you're doing a single winner-take-all thing, if the none of the above has more votes than any of the other candidates, then the election has no result.
Yeah.
And you have to hold another election.
Yeah.
That's what I think would have happened here, is that after the eighth choice, less than 157 people had none of the above in the last place. Okay? Which means that you would have had almost half of the people saying they don't want any of the candidates, and then none of the candidates would have reached the 50% of the votes that Gennady wanted to see in a candidate, and it would have been none of the above winning if none of the above was actually counted. And what that means is the vast majority of the people of the transhumanist party are not represented at this point, okay, by having the candidate they have.
If you had one wish that you could do to reform that, what would you ask for? Would you ask for a recount? Would you ask for what would you ask for?
I'd just recount it with none of the above, an unclearable candidate. When you do that none of the above just keeps accumulating its votes as people drop out from the other things. And yeah, I'd still be, dead last. That's fine. I don't care. I was the adult in the room and saying, we can't do this. And that's a tough thing to have to say to people. who, the other when the other candidates have got the grabby give-me's to a huge extent. I'm going to give you a free health care. I'm going to give you free money every month. I'm going to give you cryonics. Everybody gets cryonics. It's grabby gimmies. And they can't do it. And they know they won't ever have the opportunity to do it. So promising them hurts nothing. But I don't have the, I'm not slimy enough to offer people something I know they, even if I got it through everything and somehow became president, I wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah, but the process, it's an educational process. It teaches, it trains. It's going to put, already, for example, they're connecting
Ben
with
Zion
media.
isn't going to teach anybody anything. He's like, you can go look at my transhumanist New Deal. He never was able to articulate what the points of the transhumanist New Deal, other than $52K a year basic income and universal health care. And the rest of it, you could ask him now, and he'd still not be able to tell you the points of the New Deal, of the transhumanist New Deal, because he doesn't have them. Because the idea of a full-fledged campaign platform where you address every aspect of both the U.S. Transhumanist Party platform and every aspect of modern electoral politics and the modern political scene just was not in the mindset of the candidates here. They weren't taking this seriously.
Are you still a member of the USTP?
When I said I was leaving the group, Gennady said, "Okay, I'll remove your membership also."
Membership?
So I guess he purged me from the email list.
Well, I mean, it's sad because Ben's happy to integrate. I mean, some of these policies. I mean, Gennady's a libertarian. I mean, you and Gennady just did a whole full show on freedom. And by the way, you're welcome to the Detonation Network anytime you want. We can talk about nuclear policy and everything else. This doesn't impact the Detonation relationship that I've built up with you. I think you're great. I think you're great. But
well, you said I stormed off in a huff, and I wanted to be clear that wasn't what I was doing. What I was doing was I was leaving a situation in which I was going to be asked to assist in somebody lying to people and somebody basically perpetuating
until
a community of violence.
Until I hear from Gennady, I can't play with these ideas too much because he's got his own side of the story. He's the chairman. He knows what.
It's not even that I'm considering a lie. It's the idea that people can get a universal basic income from unused federal lands when the federal lands that are currently being leased out can't even.
We know, like I do not agree with some of that gibberish on the futurist New Deal plan either. But the point is that the people voted on a whole variety of reasons, not just policy. I mean, a lot of people voted for haywire for a variety of reasons, not just policy. And one of her things of standing up to H+ may or may have not impacted how many people turned out, because maybe you're right. Maybe there is a small element of the party that doesn't like H+.
A huge element of the party. The email list was 1,750 people, and 300 voted.
But
300. 1,700 people.
There's problems. There's problems with that. You know, there's problems with people opening it up. There's problems with it going to the spam email. There's problems with getting the message out that there's.
Gennady got
there's
an
problems
automatic
with
response.
There's problems with digital networking.
Gennady got an automatic response when people opened it up, and he said that 600 people opened it up, and over 300 of those people couldn't be parsed. Right? They couldn't spend 3 minutes filling out the voting form. Or if they went to the voting form and saw it, they decided, nah, this is bullshit. I don't want to do it.
I mean that even if you do double the numbers, even if that is 600, then what happened to the other over 1,000, right? So there's problems. There's problems with digital voting, and that's just one of the baby steps that. They got to work out. Maybe it's a blockchain system. Maybe it's going to be an app. Maybe it'll be something else in the future. Hey, I'm not worried about it because it's. I mean, this is the Stone Age version of what it can become. And there are issues. The debates are an issue. Voting's an issue. From
a transhumanist standpoint, right? If we take this and we look at it from a transhumanist standpoint, right? What has occurred is, we've got a confusion in the voting. Gennady says people seem to be confused about whether none of the and everybody above this, or which doesn't make any sense, or everybody below this I don't want. And so let's say that confusion, that those 19 people who put none of the above as their first choice meant that they wanted to vote for every other candidate.
Yeah.
Okay. Even if you say that, there's still that confusion. 157 people took it at the bottom, where it would obviously mean that they want none of. They don't mind any of the candidates. So, one way or another, you've had a confusion. And from a transhumanist standpoint, if there's a confusion, you want to solve why that confusion happened.
Yeah. And
then redo the confusing thing, right? You don't present a result based upon the confusing thing and call it the result if you're interested in equity and equality. Doing it that way, when you know there was confusion, is railroading to some degree. I don't know what maybe Johann and Ben Zion really did capture the mood of the transhumanist party. But considering that all told, 200 people, 270 people wanted him at some point, felt he was okay at some point. Which is wrong, because of course, a bunch of those none of the above, maybe they would put Ben Zion below, none of the above. I know I did. But hundreds, at most, 250 people had any opinion on him.
There was also the issue of security that you're not raising, which was the Taylor Brame thing, which was he shared the secure link to a public forum. I mean, you're not mentioning that. You're not saying, oh, whoops, that was a bad idea. How do we reform that? I mean, how many votes did you or Haywire or anybody else get because of that sort of slip up? Do we need a reform because of that? I mean, why don't you?
Well, the people who were the votes were tallied by email address, and you put your email address in the form.
Sure.
So,
but it was a dedicated secure link.
Yeah. So if your email address wasn't in the list, it doesn't matter what, who voted. But there is the thing, it's like stuffing a ballot box. Gennady had the email list. And he could have sat in the back room and filled in the form a dozen times or 24 times with the different emails that hadn't come in yet, and filled in a dozen forms.
There was supervision. There was supervision by USTP officers of the election. I'm sure that they were fair. They were very fair. I mean, but you're raising a good point. You know, transhumanists, they want to...
Are you saying that ballot box stuffing that way would work? He could have emailed a list of the email addresses to one of the candidates.
There is a great point in here that there is issues with the voting system and with the debate system and how it works, and it needs to be refined for the future. Absolutely. And it needs to be more secure. And more secure and more...
There are blockchain...
Yes.
Social media sites like Steemit.com.
Yes.
And he could have had all the voting happen on Steemit, and then everybody who
I agree
signed up Steemit and got their private voting key would have been clearly listed and their votes clearly
I agree. You can't mess with that.
And there would have been no question, and anybody could have gone to that blockchain and read it out and said, well, here's my question. It
can't not match up under a blockchain system. Otherwise the system falls apart, right? So I agree with you. I think there's inefficiencies there. The reason they couldn't do it this time is because the Constitution or the voting requirements had been set up in such a way. But this is definitely an argument. To go out.
It's easy enough to post to Steemit, and they could have done a web form that posted to Steemit and posted replies with your Steemit login, and everybody could have who wanted to vote could have created a Steemit account. It's free.
Yeah, and I like Steemit. I like Steemit for that exact reason. You get paid to use your own data as opposed to Facebook, which is you are the product.
Yeah, I've made like $10 on Steemit. I think I bought one thing. But
no, I totally agree with you. There are holes, and people like yourself. It's good to point out the holes because we can improve for the future and continuously improve, like transhumanists want to do. I mean, you want to improve the system, improve voting, improve flexibility, improve media coverage. There was some controversy around.
For 25 years, I've been subscribed to an email list called the Risks List, which literally goes and takes news stories and brings up the computer risks involved in those things. And time and again, the things that they bring up prove out as real risks that should have been addressed. When somebody gets hacked through, when somebody got locked out of, a smart home, and on the risk list years before it said, if you do a smart home, you've got the risk of being locked out of your own home because the smart locks don't recognize you. And why are those smart locks there? Is because they're, the key lock is just not secure enough. Well, the key lock is dumb. And I may have trouble getting my key in the locks one day because it's got grit in it and not turning well. But that I've got a good leeway of that happening a number of times before the key will no longer turn the lock, and I can remediate the situation. Whereas with a digital situation, it goes down, it goes down.
Sure.
So these risks are not unpredictable. I brought up the fact that the email list was old and needed to be vetted before using it for a quorum weeks before Gennady sent out, closed the vote, the election, and it decided on a voting date. I said, you need to clean this email list and verify it is active before you do a quorum based on it. And that's what he ended up doing. But late in the cycle, after hundreds of votes had already been cast and everything was clearly coming as not going to be able to reach quorum. Which, as soon as the voting started, the Haywire and I said, and Kristen Harris said, he's not going to be able to hit quorum. And sure enough, he didn't. He didn't hit the quorum that he, had as his target at the beginning of 50% of the people on his email list.
Yeah, well,
so,
because there is problems there, and they should be addressed, and the proof is in the pudding. But I just see it as an evolutionary process that you just live and you learn, and and I think everybody tried their best. To be honest, I think you tried your best. I think Haywire tried their best. I think everybody tried their best, and your idea about Steemit and or a blockchain voting system and or some secure app, encrypted app, or a personalized USTP digital profile, something along those lines, I think is the next step, the next iteration of how this voting process needs to be streamlined. And I think it's a salient point. I think you bring up an absolute salient point. To say that there was ballot box stuffing or anything, I think is probably reprehensible. To be honest, I think that's really not the case.
Is there any way for me to tell?
The USTP officers who supervised the whole event. I mean, you can talk.
All they know is that the votes that were entered on the website matched the votes that matched the names on the email list. They don't know the IP addresses. Do they know the IP addresses? Do each of those votes come from a unique IP address?
I'm sure an audit would. I'm sure an audit would reveal that. I'm not sure. I don't see how an audit wouldn't reveal that.
But we have no more information on that than we have on where people rank their none of the above votes, right? And is anybody bringing that up? No. So, well, it just occurred to me that there's nothing that would have stopped, and even if the IP addresses were all unique, there's nothing to say somebody didn't start up Tor browser and then every time they got the page, it went through a different hop stream and we had a different final IP. There's no reason that you couldn't do that. And then, how are you going to check that for?
I mean, that's the problem with email voting. I mean, and that's why it's so good to have you on the show to recognize that the evolutionary process needs to continue. In order to make these more free, more fair. I'm not gonna shut you. Like I'm gonna get a lot of slack from everybody having you on the show talking about all this stuff. But this is democracy. This is free speech. I mean, you're a libertarian. I mean, I'm pro free speech or whatever. I'm gonna have you on the show and we're gonna talk about this. But it's really good because we can see holes and that we can evolve the process to make it more fair, more transparent. I mean, that's what we want, and this is possibly the most transparent one we've had to date. With a large field, it's all evolving. I got involved with the media side to ensure that this whole process.
There was a check that they could have done, right? Every email that you send out has a system-generated key by the the sending email, right? And that's copied into your sent folder, and also goes to the person who.
Did you suggest before the voting that they should do this?
No, I didn't. It didn't occur to me that there would be the possibility of ballot stuffing.
It's because it's all well. No, Gennady wouldn't have done that for starters. Natasha Vita doesn't have as much, Illuminati shadowy power as I think people think. I think it's exact opposite.
I don't think she does either. I think she's a rich lady, and she has some clout because of that, and Humanity Plus pulls a certain amount of clout in the transhumanist movement because they've been doing things, and I appreciate that. I really do appreciate people that get out and do things.
And the cryonics thing that you bring up, I mean, that was mainly Haywire who brought that to the fore. Justice for cryonics patients, and I appreciate that. I mean, I don't want you to run that one down either. That's another one that it doesn't like that was a great idea.
But saying cryopreserving everybody who doesn't specifically wish to die. Is a Grammy gimme. It's just another.
But it's also part of this process of generating ideas, which is exactly what you and I are doing now. And we're talking elections. We're talking how to make it better. We're talking when this gets bigger, we're not going to run into these problems because Mr. Schattke came on the show and we formulated better ideas to have a better, streamlined, more fair election. I mean, that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah.
A grab me gimme at this point in the election. I mean, you could have said, "I'll fund a Mars Saturn mission with the alien robots from Area 51, who are Bill Clinton clones," and that would have been a semi-valid thing to say at this point in time. It's not. Someone like Virillion almost said that sort of stuff. I don't know. I'm being mean now, but it's an educational endeavor, and these are all. It's a think tank, essentially a policy club that is in its baby infancy, and there's issues.
Well, it's a policy club. That's being run by somebody who's doing fishy stuff. I mean, he's been interim chairman now for 3 years. When he took it over, being interim long enough to hold a vote. So. Yeah, he's playing some games, and he's got his little, personal fiefdom, and he doesn't want to lose it.
All right, well, that's the news out of Schattke HQ, now an independent candidate for president. It's really fun to have you along for the ride, and as I said, I want to have you back on the show to talk nuclear policy, to talk about your new campaign. As an independent character, there's plenty we can talk about. Did you see the interview with Kristen Conklin, by the way, about neuroweapons and about mind control?
No, I didn't see that one.
It's a fairly interesting one. I'll have her on again. Probably Ben Zion was on there. That's probably why you didn't watch it. But she was a nuclear fuel. She moved nuclear fuel at some of these test sites. Really interesting woman.
Well, for what it's worth, they've got directed energy weapons that are like a stunner now. They use a low-level microwave, and it basically induces a migraine headache, and we'll
crowd control, right?
Yeah. It basically is microwaving the brain, and the expansion of that makes people feel bad and can actually stun them and cause them to fall unconscious. Um, there's dazzlers that are in deployment where it's a laser system to flash somebody's eyes at low power and cause them to have, you know, the spots in front of their eyes. So, you know, there's things like that, but MK Ultra was a failure. That doesn't mean that they did the other means of making people psychotic weren't successful. It's just MK Ultra wanted to have control of people, and so when they called it a failure, they meant that they could not control the victims. And you know, the U.S. government has done a number of really, really evil things over the years. And I wouldn't put it past them to have continued to try to do mind control of some sort. Almost every mass shooting we've had in the last, well, almost 30 years now, the people have been were currently or were previously under psychiatric care and who had been given SSRIs along the way. And so that's, you know, and Ambien is a great example of a drug which leaves people extremely suggestible while they're taking it. There's, you know, there's the zombie plant where if you ingest it, you become extremely suggestible, and so that there are real mind control things that people can and do. So whether the government is using them, well, if you know anything about the United States CIA, you know that if there's a dirty trick that they can use, they will do it. And have done it, and that's just the facts of the matter.
Yeah.
But
well, you know, yeah, it's you know, it's interesting. I'd like to yeah, I'd like. It's very interesting, this whole mind control idea. But the point was that she was an electrical engineer. She worked at a nuclear facility. She knows a lot about nuclear, you know, nuclear technology and the electrical side of that. Very interesting stuff.
Mike DeVerd was an aerospace engineer and worked with SpaceX and NASA on the International Space Station flare shielding ideas, and you know, but I say that if you are not a nuclear engineer, you really don't understand nuclear shielding. There's the
my question is because, okay, think about this. My question is this: are scientists and people who work on these frontline industries, such as let's about nuclear field, are they at risk from foreign actors because of their importance to a particular state? Would they be at risk from a neuroweapon or other? Are they a wanted target by a foreign actor?
Well, I think
someone like you being protected secretly and you wouldn't know it because of the information that you have on nuclear stuff. I mean, that's my question. But expand that out.
Well, everybody in the United States who has a copy of nuclear modeling codes that they didn't acquire sort of overseas while they were overseas is checked by the United States government, and they have a file. And that includes me. You know, I've got a stack of things from the, you know, from the code authorities, and so they could be having, you know, low-level checks on them. When your name comes up with a known terrorist actor, they flag the conversation for manual review, and things like that would be what they would do. Since the early 80s, at least, and probably before that, the United States has had digital surveillance of every phone call and every email. They were originally called Echelon and Raptor, and you know, later changed their names as they want to do when the name gets out. And they've been using this for intelligence gathering, and with the Patriot Act, they began to be able to use that for law enforcement. Something I wholeheartedly am against, because it's a clear violation of the Fourth Amendment in the United States, and the right to privacy, and the government cannot collect any information from you or about you without a search warrant. It's just an obvious thing. We have more privacy over our medical records now than over the phone calls that we've made. So just as there's a safety net for people who have top secret clearances or you know, secret clearances, there's probably a safety net for people who can do things and know how to do things that are dangerous to the entire world, right? I haven't, you know, done the detailed designs, but I probably could, in a matter of a few days to months, design a nuclear weapon if I was pressed to. Most anybody with a master's in nuclear engineering is in that same state. Anybody who's done a core design and run MCMP, one of the things in MCMP is the Jezebel simulation, where in order to test that the code is working properly on your computer, you run a bare sphere plutonium sphere as for a criticality. That was the Jezebel core, which was shown to be critical, just at criticality in mass by experiment. So we've got this experiment where you have this mass of plutonium and it's exactly critical, and you run it at NCMP, and if your NCMP simulation of that mass doesn't come out exactly critical, then you know you have something wrong. And that's, just a back check that everybody does as soon as they install MCMP, and doesn't even realize that that's probably 30% of designing an atom bomb.
Interesting. Well, I'm going to let you go because, it's getting late over there, and I think you probably want to go. But look, thank you very much for coming on again, and we'll talk more about all this sort of stuff.
Well, thanks for hearing me out. I appreciate it. I don't wish the Transhumanist Party any ill, but I've decided that I need to do things that are in line with my morals, but yet still can further the way humanity will expand.
And I just want to remind everyone that the USTP is a broad tent. You have everyone under the sun, and I mean, you're an anarcho-capitalist. You're in here. You had someone like Ben Zion, who's a big government guy. He's in there. Haywire, who cultural stuff. Kristen T. Harris, who's libertarian-ish. I mean, Matt Taylor.
Ben Zion repurposed his Bernie Bro page where he was playing all Bernie stuff during 2016, and he had 2,000 people on that, and he could only grab 100 votes. So to talk about how he has any reach or can sway anybody when that's the case.
Yeah, well,
he's going to need help. He's going to need help.
The USTP is in its infancy. It's starting to grow out of, it's starting to, and I think I don't go on about this platform too much, but I'm trying to put normally before this platform you would have just gone into the ether or something, right? But I'm trying to actually, everybody's watching this. I'm going to get slack from this, but it's going to invite that conversation, because I actually really want to see this become a force to be reckoned with. And if you don't hear people out, and you don't improve, and you don't evolve in the correct directions, and you don't grow up, and listen to people with great ideas, and then you're never going to go anywhere as a party. You're going to end up with these same problems that you've raised, and some of them are legitimate problems. Some of them are a bit conspiratorial and don't want to entertain too much. And it's conspiratorial stuff. It's third party stuff. I mean, people with mental disorder see black helicopters everywhere, but sometimes they're just a medical helicopter.
Do I think it's likely that Gennady stuffed the ballot box? No, I don't. Do I think it's likely that Natasha Vita-Moore? Well, we know that Natasha Vita-Moore tried to, influence things.
But didn't everybody? I mean, you're a praxeologist. Everybody's trying to influence everything in your world. I mean, in your world, it's it's every man for themselves, dog eat dog capitalism, and so yeah. I don't know.
No, people aren't trying to influence everything. They're merely trying to achieve the best result
for themselves,
for their value system.
Yeah, sure. So I can see how you can see that everything is a self-help system, but at the same time, I mean, that's why we invent rules, and also it's valid that the email thing is a problem. Debates, the debate format can be adjusted. There are certain way rules and things to improve a blockchain system. I mean, Ben Zion's going on about a blockchain system on a national level. How about just start it on a local level here at the party? I mean, you're right. I mean, there's issues and there's things that we can do to improve. And
Ben Zion had mentioned that blockchain voting.
Otherwise, we're just going to have people like you who pop up every single election season, and that's just not fun, right?
What do you mean, people like me? People who come up with things about the
Valid,
election?
some valid points about inefficiencies in the process, right?
Yeah, yeah. And it's just that the process was handled in a way that seemed to me disingenuous, and by making changes after the fact, time and again.
All right. Well,
And that's all.
all right.
Peace
Well,
and joy.
thank you very much, Mr. Schattke, for coming on another episode of Dead Nation. All more coming to you all this way, all this week. We're very happy to have you back on. Listen to all your concerns, and please do come on the show again. Don't abandon me. I really want to talk about nuclear stuff and also your independent campaign. Thank you very much.
All right.